Okay, folks, so welcome to this afternoon's Wealth Creation Show. As usual, episode 43. Would you believe this, Richard?
Yeah. We're fairly getting through them.
As well as the other 110 Saturday morning shows that we do as well as the other midweek shows as we do as well. Anyway, how would you have time to do anything else? This is all about 10 tips to build wealth. This is right down to the bare basics, and I'll show you why. Unfortunately, people on TikTok won't be able to see this because I can't show graphics, but this is it here. So this was all came about. This was the Sunday Times contacted me. They wanted me to talk about, what it was, why I was involved in property investment. This must have been about 15 or 20 years ago. They actually contacted me because you'll see the age of the boys there. I mean, Scott must be about, 5? Ben was probably about 6 or 7. Tony was about 12 or 13 or thereabouts. And I was, I still didn't have hair.
You've got more than you do now.
And you know how tragic I am? I still have that shirt that I've got on now, and I still wear that shirt. But I tell you what, it's 10 top tips to build wealth. Why am I still wearing that shirt? That's the reality. And I'll tell you why. Because I tell you what, personally for me, I think we waste a lot of money, or I waste a lot of money, or I could waste a lot of money on things that I really don't need to impress people that I really don't like. And I've got over that. That's out of my head now. I don't think about that anymore. I just think about what else could I spend on? And people think it's like, oh, well, why would you want to do that? It's kind of a sad life thinking like that all the time. And it's like, well, it is. And it isn't, because it teaches me to train myself and train my mind to think, do I absolutely need what I've got? And classic example yesterday, it's like, oh my goodness. When we walked into that restaurant and I saw a fillet steak was £27, I could not believe that. I about fell off my chair. I thought we were getting gold plates or something.
Yeah, that has to be nice.
And you told me that's the sign of the times. Now, the last time I ate steak, was several years ago, and it was 12 quid. So it's more than double the price now. Incidentally, so anybody knows, I'm vegan. So that's why I don't eat steak anymore. But I tell you what, I'm saving an absolute fortune.
Do you know, looking at that picture, Jim, and you saying about your shirt and things, it shows that what we speak about on this show, and we touched on it on Saturday as well when we're talking about how much we spend on things that are unnecessary, and how I've in the recent months looked at what my spending, and I spend things really unnecessarily, and I know I do. But I think it's all about the long game, and if you cut out all those unnecessary minor things along the way, you can still enjoy life and have a lot of good things, but obviously you need to do that to then accumulate this wealth to allow you to do that. So it's delayed gratification as well.
Yeah. Well, that goes hand in hand.
That was last week's show. So they all tie it.
Delayed gratification, it's compounding wealth. It's compounding over a period of time. And every single person out there doesn't realise they all have the ability and capacity to do this.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, and I've talked about it again and again and again. This is a great example about how one guy chose, instead of going to the pub on a Sunday night, he would actually just work a night shift, and how much money that would actually make him if he just took that money instead of spending it and actually invested it over a 10-year period. It would literally make him an absolute fortune. I think it was about another 150 grand.
It's still over 100,000, yeah.
Yeah, it was something crazy. And it's like, who wouldn't want another 150 grand in their pocket after 10 years? Answers on a postcard, I would say, but it's pretty obvious you would. But just by working that one night shift on a Sunday night instead of going to the pub, it made a huge difference to that person's lifestyle. It will make a huge difference. But it's also being consistent and actually following and disciplining yourself to do that, rather than actually seeing in your bank account, maybe halfway through this, oh, I've got that amount of money. I could maybe take that holiday. I could maybe do this, or I could maybe do that. That again comes back to delayed gratification. But also it's got a bigger mindset of where you're going to be in the 10 years. For me, it was always about financially free in retirement. And retirement is nothing to do with age. It is everything to do with money.
Yeah.
You could retire. I knew people when I first started out 30 years ago, it were retiring at 25 years old.
That's
25 years, God, you're not even getting started yet. And you're retiring at 25-year-old, and it's like, what? Why would you want to do that? And that's when the penny dropped for me. It was nothing to do with age, because in our society, we're conditioned mentally to think that you should work for 40 years and retire at 65, now 67 years old. We follow that process. We go to school, we go to university, we build debt, we buy a house, we build even further debt, we get a car, we build even more debt, and then we have to spend the rest of our 40 years working to pay this debt off that we've accumulated as a result of the system that we bought into. Now, I'm not saying don't buy into the system and rage against the machine. You know, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about let's have an uprising and all the rest of it. Let's storm the capital. No, we're not talking about that at all. What we're talking about is actually realizing where you are right now and the choices you have available right in front of you right now as well. That's what, for me, is the most important thing. Oh, so where did it all start for me? Where can it start for you to build wealth? Not only for you, but for your family and your wider community. It's easier than you think. And it really starts with creating good habits and taking advantage of some simple, everyday opportunities that you know, but just don't see it. It goes right by because you're not tuned into it. You don't realize it's there. So you don't realize it's right in front of you. I mean, I've literally, we did this years ago in behavioral science. We actually stood down a high street and we gave away £5 notes. Do you know a lot of people wouldn't want to take them? Because some people thought there was going to be a catch. The majority of people actually wouldn't take them because they actually thought there was going to be a catch. How many times have you been at a seminar and the guy at the front held up a £20 note and goes, this is the £20 note for the person that's going to take that opportunity to get it. And no one gets up out of the crowd and goes and snatches that £20 note out of their hand. You maybe get one person that does it in thousands. Yeah. And that is the difference with seeing opportunity and actually just letting it walk right by you, not actually seeing it at all. We become completely oblivious, completely almost blind to the opportunities in front of us by the system that's indoctrinated us into the 40-year plan. And it is a 40-year plan. In the years to come, this will be a work till you die plan if you don't do something about it now.
Yeah, it's like the thing we spoke about before, Jim. I don't know if we've done this on a show or it was just between us, but we spoke about they've done experiments about the people in the room with the smoke and the fire alarm and things. I thought that was astonishing that people would ignore a fire alarm or ignore smoke just because everybody else was.
It's behavioral science. Now, that was the one in the fire alarm where the fire alarm went off and the rest of the people in the room, the other 20 people in the room, or the other 19 people out of the 20, knew not to get up when the fire alarm went off. The other person who was the test subject actually didn't know anything about this, and they wanted to see if that person would conform with the other 19 because they didn't get up and went out. Now, the majority of cases it actually did. They didn't get up. The fire alarm went off. They stayed where they are because the other 19 stayed where they were. Another 19 was told to stay where they are. They even put smoke under the door, and it really took a big difference in that person's shift in mentality for them to actually get up and walk out the door, even though the other 19 actually sat there. Most of the people actually, when the smoke came under the door of the 1 and the 19, it was the test subject, they didn't get up and walk out because the other 19 sat there and said, it's probably just a test. It's probably just something to do with the system or something like that. And they actually didn't get up and walk out. And it's the same what we're in. Albert Einstein said this. He said this, you will be where you are in the next 5 years. Jim Rohn said it as well, and Zig Ziglar said it as well. By the people you associate with and the books you read, I can tell you straight away where you'll be in the next 5 years. Just by the books you're reading right now, or the podcast you're listening to right now, or the people you're associating with right now. That will determine where you're going to be in the next 5 years. It's a frightening thought, because for some people listening to this and watching this, they'll be looking at the people that they surround themselves with and they communicate with and thinking, holy shit, I do not, that is not the lifestyle I want. But you have to change it, I'm afraid. You have to change it. You get like the people you associate with. I used to get told all the time, my mum used to say to me, don't go about with these people.
Fly with the crows.
What's wrong with that? Because it'll rub off on you.
Yeah.
Every single time. And guess what? I didn't listen to a word she said, and I always got into trouble.
Yeah.
Because all these people got into trouble as well I went about with. So that's it. The power of association is really important in this way, and discipline and consistency. We're going to talk about some of the 10 top tips here. You don't need to go back to school. This is based on my own personal experience in terms of that. So we're going to talk about main headings, but we're going to dive a wee bit deeper into that, into what that really means. I had to do a wee bit of thinking about it, because it's, for me, it's going back to the early days about, you know, how did it all happen, where did it all happen, and how it all came about. I mean, maximizing the returns from your investments may be on your new list, your new to-do list. And here are the 10 tips we're going to talk about now. The value investments, remember, and I always put it on here in the post, the value investments can fall as well as rise, and you can get less back than what you invest. If you're not sure about investing, seek professional independent advice. We're not here to do that. I'm here to tell you my story and tell you how I looked at it and how I looked at it, and hopefully you can learn from it. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask questions as well. I'm more than happy to answer some questions for people that I've got on this subject. We'll be coming up to a new tax year. Now, we're 6 months away from that right now, from November, the tax year. I was actually up with my boys last night and saying, how much you got in the bank? Loan that to my company, and I'll give you interest at 10%, and you're allowed up to £1,000 interest every year, tax-free. And that will make absolute sense, doesn't it? You've got it sitting in the bank now, and they were going, yeah, that makes sense completely. And I'll just pay you 10%. And it's a great way, because it's tax deductible to me, and it's interest-free to them. So it's a way for them to make money, and a way for them to maximise their returns. I was also asking them about their pensions and saying, yeah, they have pensions from birth, what they've got in their pensions, and what I need to contribute to their pension to compound that wealth as well. I was asking them if they have anything else and what else they're doing in their company pensions and that. So, and then how their ISAs are getting on. So their lifetime ISAs for buying the first house. So most of them, the two of them, are actually halfway through that, and they're putting £200 away every single month for that reason. So these are all things that they're doing, and these are all things that I'm teaching them. And the reason for that is because I don't want them to suffer the way I suffered. You know, this is a misconception where most parents, like myself as well, before I understood this, actually thought to themselves, you know, my children need to go through what I went through in order to understand what I understand. Well, no, they don't. Just teach them that anyway. Let them find out from wisdom rather than experience.
Yeah, rather than having to go through that.
Let them stand on your shoulders so they can reach higher than you can reach. After all, that's surely what you'd want for your children, for them to be better off than you are, have more opportunities than you have. Surely that's what you want. Or do you really want them to go through all the struggles that you went through just to prove a point, to get to the same stage that you're at and not any further? I wouldn't think so. And I don't think people really understand that concept. That's what we should be doing. We should be letting these children stand on the shoulders of giants, people like Musk, people like Bill Gates, people like all these people, and all these super wealthy people who can teach us lessons about what they're doing. There's loads of information on YouTube and that from all these people talking about this for free. And this is where I learn it from. And this is where I've learned it from all these years, attending seminars, meeting these people, understanding how they think, taking all their information and actually applying it to what I do. The concepts and the principles are exactly the same about what we're to discuss here. For the boots on the ground, where you're first starting off, this is probably what we're going to talk about right now. So this is back down to the bare basics, you know, where we're going to look at. So the number one here for me, remember, we're not offering advice. I'm just telling you what we're doing. Seek professional financial advice if you want. Martin Lewis Money Saving Tips is really good. Although I do think sometimes that it maybe gets people out of a hole, but it actually teaches them just to get to a certain level, because it's all about scarcity, and it's all about keeping a hold of money, and it's all about thinking there's billions upon billions upon trillions of pounds of money out there. You just have to work out a way to get it.
Yeah,
that's all you need to do. It's still there. You just have to work out how you're going to get a bit, how you're going to get a slice of that pie. This is some of the things that we talk about in these shows. So the first one for me is all about reducing debts. So why do I say that? Well, it's a sensible first step to pay off these debts before embarking upon actually investing in anything. You should have the mentality when your money comes in is, what can I invest in, and then what have I got left to spend? Not
spend then invest.
And then what do I have to invest? That's not what that's how successful people and very successful people, rich and super wealthy, think. What can I invest in? This is why they talk about, if you give a wealthy person £5,000, they'll say, what can I invest in? And it goes nowhere. If you give somebody on the street £5,000, or they'll disseminate it among everybody else, and everybody else will get a slice of that £5,000. This is why they were arguing about the trickle down and the bubble up. And the bubble up and the principle should be where it is, because that then goes out the effect right through all the economy. You don't give it to the rich people because they'll never pass it down anyway. It just goes on a yacht, it goes on something else, or it gets put in the bank, and that's it. Nothing happens to that money. It doesn't generate anything else. Work out what you owe. This is the key here in your debts, reducing your debts. Work out what you owe, okay? And then check the rate you're paying, and then tackle the debts with the highest amount. So look at your credit cards, look at your loans, if you've got a loan on your car, look at any other loans you've got, anything you've got short-term finance, anything you've got to pay off, and start tackling the biggest debts first, the most expensive ones first, because you're paying a lot higher on that. Now, I'll be honest, here's a really good one. It was Warren Buffett I was actually talking about it. We talked about this the other week. It was a classic. When the mother of the daughter was paying 26% on her credit card every single month, and the daughter had money in the bank, and the daughter thought to herself, I need to get a good return. So Warren Buffett's suggestion was, why do you not just go to your daughter and say, can I just pay my credit card off with it, and then I'll pay you the 26%? See what I did with the boys? It's like, why do I not just do that and use your money, and then I'll pay you 10% all the time, and you've still got your money? It's as good as, it's probably safer than in the bank, to be honest. And that's the key. So it's tackling the highest debts first. The first thing you should do in your budget and responsibility is reduce your debts, because if you get the highest debt, it's because most of your cash is going out to pay that debt and interest. So if you get that highest debt first and eliminate that, you've got more cash to pay the other ones off. And then you go down the next one, the next one, the next one. If you've got somebody that's going to, it's going to do a trade-off, and you've got a good relationship, and you'll pay them, you better pay them. I tell you what, if you go to somebody and say, I'm going to get a loan, you'll never ever see that money again. This is where you know if people actually trust you. Because they'll tell you they're not going to pay off your loan. I had a wee bit of thing with Scott last night. It's like, I said, Scott, just you give me that. And he went, what? Like, I'll give you that money to pay me 10%. It's like, no, I'd rather just leave it in the bank. I went, what? Does that mean you didn't trust your dad? Ben was like, I need bother. It's like, what? Are you telling me you didn't trust me? I was like, I'm offering you 10%, basically free gratis, because I don't need it, but the company can pay it for you. And he was like, he honestly thought about it, and I thought, well, okay, if that's the way you want, you'll not be inheriting anything anyway. You're off the list. Get my pen out. Push you out. That's it. You're off. You're out of the wall. Forget your discretionary trust. Anyway, so reduce your debts. That's one way, is tackle the big credit cards first. What's the other thing that you've been taught to do recently? The second one.
I think for me, is tracking your spending. And Jim, obviously we've discussed this in previous shows, and
how's that happening for you?
We were talking about on Saturday, and I mean, it's made me look at all my spending and really track what I'm actually spending on. And I think it's worth monitoring what you're spending for maybe a couple of months and see exactly where your money goes, and whether you could free up any spare cash to save or invest. And that is really something that I'm practicing at the moment. And whether you can free up the cash and then save it and reinvest it is definitely the way forward. You might find that you have more than you expect to have as spare each month, simply by trimming your spending. Now, there's examples of that as cutting out takeaways, cancelling any unused television subscriptions. Everybody's got like Disney Plus, Netflix, all the rest of it nowadays. And there's a wide range of phone apps and online tools that could help you actually track your spending and monitor and budget effectively what your outgoings are and where you need to be concentrating at that.
See the amount of people out there that'll walk into their house and they'll look at what they've got in terms of their Sky and stuff like that, and they tell me it's like, oh, my Sky's a bit dear, eh? and then they announce that they've got a Sky package and it's like 90 quid, and I'm, what? Sorry, 90 quid for the year? No, 90 quid a month. It's like, holy shit, 90 quid a month? I've got council telly.
Yeah.
I've got Freeview. It's like, I would never buy things like Sky and stuff like that. It's like, my God, I've not got time to watch things like that. I'm too busy creating my future and my children's future, my grandchildren's future, and everybody else's future that's involved with me. So I didn't have time to do things like that. You know, yes, I do have Disney Plus, and yes, I do have Netflix, and yes, I do have Amazon. Just so happens Amazon's a good one because you get it. Amazon Prime as a part of your business anyway. But my point is, the only thing I've got really is super fast broadband. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, which isn't working very great here.
I was just going to say, you're breaking up a wee bit. But what I have, and the way I justify my Sky slightly to myself, is that my Netflix is included, and obviously my internet's included in that. But as for the TV package, we don't even watch the TV because we watch Netflix or we watch Disney Plus, or we've got Amazon Prime as well. And half the time that's what we're watching, not the actual TV. But because my Netflix is
do you think if you went down to the basics, how much would you save a month?
I could probably, but then the channels that I actually do watch aren't included in that.
But where else could you get these channels?
Sorry?
Where else could you get these channels?
Well, I probably wouldn't, because it's Sky. Things like Sky Nature and things like that that we watch are part of the bigger packages, so they catch you that way.
BBC's got it all for free.
Yeah,
it's it's Frozen Planet and all the rest of it. It's like,
I don't
really need to watch Sky Nature.
I don't have an excessively big Sky bill, and the fact that my internet and Netflix is included, that's how I justify it to myself. Yeah. But there could be room there.
90 quid for a Sky bill, and then you're looking at Netflix and you're looking at other things as well, and you're incorporating all that in. I mean, the other one is broadband. Do you really need? The only reason I've got super fast 1 gig broadband is because I need it for things like this. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'll pay half it, and my company pays half it, because there's no way I would have had it otherwise. I had the basic 500 meg. Which was about 45 quid, and then I was able to upgrade to 60, the 62 pound for the 1 gig. So I've got my company to pay half it. So really, the broadband for me is only 30 quid a month, and that's fine because I've got it for everything I need, and I know how much streaming and how much gaming all other lot do. Incidentally, I tried to cancel the Virgin Media, and they just laughed at me and says, "You'll never get anything like what you're getting now anywhere else." and I went. Damn you!
I've got you.
And I did leave. I went, I'm off. And then almost 2 days before it was due to run out after the 4 weeks period for notice, I phoned them back and went, actually, I've maybe changed my mind. I've had a wee change of heart. I'm glad I never got the same guy again, because he was so up himself with the whole thing. But it was true. I did do that as a result. I actually went back to doing that. So track your spending. Make sure you do online tools. Make sure you look at all these things that you really don't need. Do you really need all the stuff that you're using? That's what you've got to think about.
Yeah.
Plan goals, how to achieve them. That's probably the next one for me. Okay, so what I mean, once you've decided you've had enough money to spare to invest, because a lot of people out there say they've not got enough money to invest, but you do have enough money to invest. It's all just about priorities. If you get takeaway, if you've got subscription television, if you've got a mobile phone, it's no essential mobile phones, remember. I mean, what did we do when we didn't have them? You just waited till you got home. And then if you've got anything like that, any of these what I would deem luxuries outside of the normal day to day, and you could just switch off, then you've got money to invest. It's just a matter of priority. Is what you think is the most important to invest in. That's all it comes down to. Classic example of that is if you tell me you've got no money to invest and you've got a car that you get to work, I would say, well, if your car tire burst tomorrow and you needed to get that fixed, what would you do? And every single person would say to me, I would just go to the garage, get it sorted. And I would say straight away, how on earth did you get the money to get that for sorted then if you didn't have any money?
You'll always find a way if it's necessary. So
absolutely. If you really want to do it, you'll do it. I've always known that over the years. I've met so many people have just looked at opportunities and gone, oh, I can't afford to do that. And it's like, I say, you can't afford not to do it. That's what it is. You can't afford not to do this, especially with what they're predicting is coming. But we're not going to talk about that. We're just talking about this, about how to more or less make more money and create more wealth for yourself out of the existing resources you've got, more or less. Okay, so set some goals, start saving for them. You know, pensions, classic example. If you've got children or young children, start off pensions now for them. And we'll talk about that probably later on. But it's essential because you get the tax back as well, and the compounded wealth for them will make sure they've got something for the future. And it's only, you're not talking about 10 quid, 20 quid a month. You're not talking about huge amounts you've got to plough into this. It just compounds over time and gives them another choice for later on. How much do you need and what level of risk you're happy with? Accept in order to get where you can, help you work out your investment plan and stick to it. So accept somebody to help you get to there. And take advice from somebody that's a professional, a financial advisor or something like that to help you with that. I actually believe the best way to achieve your long-term investment goals is to have what we call a diversified portfolio. In other words, maybe in property, maybe in your pension, maybe in an ISA, maybe in your education. Maybe you want to do.
We done a show about that. I think that was episode 40.
Maybe you want to do further education in this, in terms of what you want to do. And have different funds in different sectors based on your investment approach and what you'd like to see. If you want to invest and find it too time consuming, need a bit of inspiration, then go and look at some of the investment houses. Go and look at some of the podcasts. Don't invest with them, by the way, because most of them are just like to reel you in, and then the next minute you're like, wait a minute, I've lost all my money. Go to cast iron investment houses like Scottish Widows, Prudential, Standard Life, Aberdeen Standard Life Investments, people like that. Buy into their funds. For me, it's always UK equities. That's what I've done all the time. UK equities. The top 10 blue chip stocks that they invest in are people like Diageo, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Glencore, which is exploration for oil and gas, Diageo, which is premium drinks company. These are all the part of the top 10s that they're doing. So that's the sort of stock market investments I'm saying, the UK equities, which is, to them, they classify that as category 6 and risk. And yet their top is category and risk is category 7. And I'm like, really? That's a risk? Investing in UK equities long term? I don't get that, because long term UK equities always go up. There's always like a 4% return in the last 20 years every year on UK equities in terms of dividends. So I don't see anything wrong with investing in UK equities, but that's me personally. That's the boys and my daughter as well have got invested in that as well for their pensions. So that's the kind of things. The next one I would talk about, and this is maybe important to you, Richard, as you'll reach this goal, UK tax allowances. Now, why do I talk about this? I was actually looking at Scott's tax allowance from his tax notice from on his allowance from the HMRC last night, and they had decided to say, oh, by the way, we think you're actually going to make a bit more next year, so we're going to reduce your tax allowance by this amount. Excuse me, so you take money off of me before I've actually made it.
Yeah,
they do that with me as well. Every single year, what they do with me is this: they put on a tax allowance and they say, "Oh, we're going to reduce your 12,500, and we're going to reduce it to something like $7,000, because we actually think you're going to be in 40% bracket, so you're going to be due us more tax." Excuse me, but there's never been a year I've been in 40% taxpayer, and there's never been a year. And even if I'm a 40% taxpayer next year, I'll make damn sure I'm a basic ratepayer at the end of it. And the reason I do that is because I put a huge contribution into my personal pension, and that actually brings it down to basic rate tax. Yeah. So I'm never doing that. So you just get in touch with the HMRC and say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm only going to be a basic ratepayer this year. You're no whacking X amount of money off me every single month in tax, especially if I've got to wait 2 years to claim it back. So that's one of the things I would say: watch your tax code and watch what the taxman's doing, and actually read the notes at the back. I think it's C note 4, where you can actually just write to them, or you can just call them up and say, I have no intention of being a higher rate taxpayer next year. I will be contributing towards my pension in order to bring that down, or doing something, or doing maybe a wee bit less work, which won't make me. So I don't want you to take that money off of me. And they quite rightly won't do that. So that's one of the things you must realise about your annual allowances. Watch out for that. The sneaky one that the taxman does. You'll see it in your PAYE code as well. If it changes from 1250 or something like that, and it goes down to like 800, you know you're getting something whacked off of you, but you've maybe missed it. You do get a notification, by the way, but you've maybe missed it. That's all. So that's one to watch out for, definitely. So I definitely watch out for that one, the HMRC tax code. One of the most popular ISA allowances, the ISA allowances is 20,000. You can pay in the ISA allowance once you into one or more of the cash stocks or shares or innovative finance ISAs. You know, to be honest, I've no used them. You know, I've got pensions, I've got property, and all the rest of it. I've looked at ISAs, but to me, it's like, well, I'm not really sure. It's too short-term investment for me. I'm medium to long-term investor all the time. So, but for other people, it might suit perfectly well for them. So that might be the ideal opportunity for them. So invest in peer-to-peer lending is another one, or you can put up to 4,000 into a lifetime ISA. You won't pay an income tax or dividend tax or capital gains tax on any investments you actually hold in an ISA. You might not pay tax on interest and dividends anyway. As investors have a tax-free dividend allowance. If anybody noticed that, you've got a tax-free dividend allowance, by the way, of £2,000 a year. So you can actually take £2,000 out of your limited company, tax-free, with no tax on it at all. So I would recommend everybody who's got a limited company, take out £2,000 in dividends every year, even though you're not taking any money out, and just lend it back to the company as a director's loan. And then you could charge interest on that director's loan, by the way. See what I'm doing there? Because you can get £1,000 interest free every year. So you're actually taking it out tax efficient because you're getting £2,000. You're handing it back to your company as a director's loan. So you can take that money out anytime you want without any tax now because you've got it. But you're handing it back and you're actually charging interest to your company on the loan that you've just given it. That could build up to a nice sum over 10 years.
Yeah.
That's £20,000. So that's another one. Right, let's talk about dividend income. So we've talked about that. We've talked about your ISA allowances. There's also a personal savings allowance. This enables the basic rate taxpayer to earn up, as I said, £1,000 interest tax-free. I never knew about this. I never knew about this until about 2 or 3 months ago. That you can actually earn up to £1,000. So if you have a director's loan with your company, you should be charging your company interest on your loan that you're giving them. You shouldn't be leaving it in tax-free or interest-free. Also, or £500 for higher rate taxpayers, which, as I said, I'd never be intention of wanting to be a higher rate taxpayer. Additional rate taxpayers entitled to an allowance. So ISAs may remain worthwhile for those who don't qualify or who have a large amount of savings and used up with the personal, as I say, the personal savings allowance. Now, additional ratings allowance, additional ratings allowance. If you're an elderly person, you actually get extra allowances as well for being elderly, just because of your age. So that's another thing you should be looking into with the revenue services if you're drawing down your pension to make sure you're actually on the right tax codes. If you have a capital gains allowance as well, 12,300 for the tax year 2022 to 23 this year. So if you invest outside an ISA, any profits made on the annual capital gains tax allowance are subject to 10% or 20% depending on your tax band. Now, if it's on the sale of a property, it's 18% for basic rate payers, it's 28% for higher rate taxpayers. Remember that the tax rules can change in future with effects that depend on your particular circumstances, it can alter over time. If you are married, here's a good tax allowance coming for your capital gains, because you both get capital gains and you can transfer part of the gain to your partner on the day of transfer just before you settle it, and you can use their capital gains allowance as well. So you can get a capital gains allowance of 24,600. That's a good capital gains allowance for the year.
Yeah.
So you could go out and redevelop a property and actually make £25,000, obviously, in gains on that property, and you could both use your capital gains allowance in that year. You could do that every single year, and you could make 25 grand tax free every year. I never thought about that. That's another one. Over 10 years. That's 250 grand tax free.
Yeah.
My God. It's like all these opportunities out there. Anyway, remember the tax rules, as I said, might not apply at this point in time. So check the tax rules now, because this might be an older show to some people. Okay, so use your tax allowances. If you need to you need to complete your self-assessment tax return. Remember, the deadline on filing is the 31st of January for the tax year just passed. So the tax year is the 31st of March. I mean, technically it's the 5th of April, because that's the way it works. But it's the 31st of March for everybody, really. In essence, that's how they work it. They don't worry about a week later. They give it an allowance for that. So it's 31st of March. The 31st of March 2022 is the tax year. You must submit your tax return before the 31st of January 2023. Or you miss the deadline, you'll be fined £100. Okay. If you want the taxman to calculate that self-assessment for you, I think you can. Well, you're too late now, but you can put it in before the 30th of September, and they will actually calculate it for you. And so you don't need to bother getting an accountant. You can just put all your return in and all your figures in. They come back and say, this is what you're due us, rather than you actually having to work that out on your self-assessment at the 31st of January, or as most people do, oh my God, on the 30th of January.
The day before.
I need to get my tax return in for tomorrow. Because that's usually what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the next one you would say, Richard?
Well, habits and starting new habits is probably the next one. That is the next one. Making regular monthly contributions can be effective and relatively pain-free if you do it in that way, and build long-term wealth through that way. Remember, however, investing should be generally considered once you've got rid of that short-term unsecured debt that we spoke about, obviously reducing your debts, and repay that first.
Absolutely. Now, you've made a really good point there, because a lot of people think they should invest while they've got the debt. But if the debt is more, the interest on the debt is more than what you can make a return on investment, you go and pay off your debts first.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. That's look at your unsecured debts and sort that out before you start down the road of investment. And then drip feeding money into investments gradually can be particularly beneficial if you're maybe nervous about the impact of maybe the economic impact or political uncertainty like we've got at the moment in the years ahead.
Right. See, that's a good word to use, actually, drip feed.
Yeah.
Because it is drip feed. You're not actually required. You don't put thousands of pounds in every single month. You don't put hundreds of pounds in every single month. Just start off with something. It's like the couch to 5K thing. You just start off for a walk, and over a period of time, you learn how to run, and then eventually you're running 5K, and then eventually you do interval training, and then eventually you get faster at your 5K, and then eventually you go, I tell you what, I could probably do a 10K. It's like, but you've got to start somewhere. So that's where drip feed is a real important thing to do. And remember that, starting a new habit, drip feed everything.
The couch to 5K thing is a brilliant analogy of how you build that up and get to that point, and you're like, God, how am I here? I can run 5K, let's do more. But bear in mind, you may still lose money as your investments could fall as well as rise in value depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if it's property and things, it's a lot more stable than maybe stocks and whatever. So, well, there can be benefits to investing regularly rather than, like you say, a lump sum, do the drip feed thing.
I don't particularly like the lump sum attitude to invest in. I think it's better to drip feed because it gets you into a consistent. It gets you in consistent discipline in your mind. It's like starting and stopping. Here's a classic analogy about how this works. When you jump into a pool, right? Mm-hmm. You dip your toe in the pool, don't you, to test the water? Yeah, and at that point, you're ready to jump. At that point, before that, you were ready to jump into that pool. But all of a sudden, you just realised it's like, oh my God, it's blooming Baltic. It's like, oh, right. And now your mind starts to work on the principle of should I get in, should I go out, should I get in, should I go out. Mm-hmm. And my attitude is all the kids run right behind you and just way and jump in. It's like, you wee bampots. You're just throwing me up. I never, ever dip my toe in the pool now because it just doesn't look cool. It's straight in regardless. I don't care if I freeze to death. I'm in there because it's once you're in there, you start to get warm, right? Because you're moving about all the time. So running in, you see it at the beach as well, where people run to the water and they go, oh, and they run back out again. It's like, but you're going to be in the water at some time anyway. So just get on and do it. And that's the same with what we've talked about here. It's the lump sum versus the drip feed. The drip feed is running in, staying in, and just keeping in there. The lump sum is running into the water and going, oh my God, it's Baltic, and running back out. But guess what? You have to do the same again, and the same again, and the same again. And it's more stressful. Therefore, just create the habit. And then all your spending patterns become that habit as well, because you're drip feeding rather than doing lump sums.
Yeah, definitely. And always remember that the impact fees might have on your investments. So if you're only investing small amounts each month, the minimal monthly fee could make it expensive and may exceed your returns and things. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, well. Standard Life for me, the administration fee for Standard Life is 0.87%.
Yeah, so that's...
I'm fine with that. Of the fund, it's like, okay, it's maybe 1,200 quid a year. It works out for me, but the reality is the fund's sitting at about, what, 130 grand or something like that. But I don't rely on that. That's just for tax deduction. That's all I do it for. And eventually you'll get it out, you'll draw it down, and you'll have to pay tax on it anyway. But there's ways to mitigate that when you draw it down. And there's ways to do that, and I'm working on that right now. The next one for me is definitely.
Let's see, what's the next one for you, Jim?
Yeah, let's top up your pension.
Yeah,
I used to hate pensions, and the reason I used to hate pensions is because I thought it's like you're paying into the same thing as everybody else, but you've never got an opportunity to get a hold of it until you actually physically retire at an old age. And by the time you're the old age and you get that money, you're probably not able to enjoy the things that you really wanted to enjoy in the first place. That's what I didn't like about pensions. That's why I love property and investing in property, because property produces residual income every single month and cash flow, and it also actually goes up in money over a period of time. But it's easy access. You could actually sell a property if you wanted to get the capital out of it. If you've got capital in, you could actually use some of the monthly income every single month, because you should pay yourself a salary potentially, or if you've got a limited company, pay yourself dividends because it's tax efficient. And you don't pay national insurance on dividends, by the way. So it's another tax efficient measure to actually take money out of a company in a tax efficient way. So that's why I don't like pensions that much, but I love pensions when it comes to being a higher rate taxpayer, because you just put a certain amount in, it brings you straight down to a lower rate taxpayer. You get the benefit of not having to pay the higher rate, and also you get the kickback of the additional rate from the pension company for the top up to the basic allowance. So if you put 2,880 in a year, they top that up. The government tops up to 3,600. So you're getting money for nothing.
Yeah.
And for me, should I really call it? It's not really a fallback, is it? It's like I'll retire on the pension, and all my wealth all generational wealth will be passed on to my family and put in trust. That's the way I intend to do it. And the next house I go to, I will rent for that reason, because I will not give a penny to the taxman inheritance tax when I go. Hopefully I didn't go tomorrow, because I'm screwed. Because I'm screwed, and for millions. It's like the BAM pots. So provided you take into account the pension allowances and you don't contribute more than 100% of your income to there, you receive a tax relief at the basic rate of 20% of the contributions you make in the workplace, and also in your personal pensions. Workplace pensions will not save you, by the way. No. It's what everybody else is getting. So when everybody else retires at the same time as you, you're all on the same income. That's exactly where you are right now, if probably not worse, because it ends up being about 2/3 of what you couldn't afford to live on in the first place.
Yeah.
That's why workplace pensions won't save you. You have to do something outside of that, a side hustle. So if you take out another private pension, that's what I've done. It's like, take out another private pension, that'll pay for it. Or if your employer wants to pay into your private pension, that's maybe another option. You have a great employer that might actually do that. Because workplace pensions are just basic things to do a legal obligation, and nobody's really thought about it. And it's people like Aviva and that are running it, who are doing it in safest houses sort of thing. Yeah. No safest houses of any means, but safe security, like bonds and stuff like that. It's all stuff that's low yielding. That's not gonna pay for any lifestyle when you get to a certain age. So every £80 you put in, they'll top it up to 100. So they're giving you £20 for every 80 quid you're putting in. The higher rate of your income tax you pay, the greater tax relief you get in your pension contributions, by the way. If you're a higher rate additional payer, for example, you can claim up to an additional 20% or 25% on top of the basic rate through your self-assessment tax return. That's how you don't pay it then. You don't pay the higher rate tax. You actually get that off. You don't pay it.
Yeah.
However, remember that the tax rules may be altered in future, and it depends on personal situation and can also change as well. Bear in mind, too, that you can't ordinarily draw benefits on a pension until you're at least on a personal pension. It's 55 right now for me. I can do it now. I can retire, but for it is rising to 57.
For me, it'll be 57.
Yeah, so you'll be 57. So this could be. I tell you what, Richard, if you retire at 57, you'll be quids in. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Because if you're able to retire at 57, everybody else will still be working at your age.
Yeah.
You're 20 years before me, so you're 35 now.
Yeah.
So that'll be a good thing. Now remember, I think I did it in 8 years to do it. So I did it from standing start in 8 years when I actually put it into context. It took me 3 years to get over the mental thing about being able to retire and actually being able to do this. But once I got started, I thought, oh, I could do this. And then 8 years later, woohoo, retired, financially free. So that's probably what I would say is most important, is probably make sure you got a pension, make sure your children have a pension from birth, even if it's 20 quid a month for your kids from birth.
Drip feed.
It'll make a huge difference. When you get salaries and that as well, if you get a salary increase, here's another one as well. If you got a salary increase, put that increase aside for savings or put it in for investments. Don't take it into account. Don't think, oh, great, I can now buy a better car. I can now have a better holiday. To hell with that. Your holiday is going to cost you a fortune in the long run because you've taken all that money, not reinvested it. You've spent all that money, and then it's ended up costing you a fortune in the long run, and you cannot retire because you did that. So you're putting off. I got temporarily ambitious to be permanently lazy. That's what I did.
Yeah.
All you need to do is concentrate on this for 10 years. Give it your best shot. And I tell you what, you'll be financially free.
Well,
so that's
sorry, I'm just going to say that brings us on to the next thing. And I was going to say about sticking it out. And sticking it out, obviously, like you say, Jim, building wealth doesn't happen overnight. And ideally, you should invest for a minimum period of at least 5 years initially to ensure that your investments have time to kind of ride out the highs and the lows, stock markets, and potentially smoothing returns over the longer term, like you say there. Now, no one could know exactly where markets might rise or fall, but stay invested in your investments, and you can help avoid the risk of missing any of the best days because you've sold maybe at the wrong time if you're doing stocks, or if you've sold your property, your investment property, thinking, no, I'll sell now, the prices are high.
That's crazy. See how many people actually, they've got investments in the stock market, and when the stock market drops, they panic. They go, oh my God, the stock market has dropped. I'm going to lose a fortune. It's like, oh, no. It's like, I'll have to cash it in. And they run out and cash it in. And it's like, oh my God, do you not realize this is going to recover in the next couple of years? Yeah. It's like, this is a short-term attitude to things. They just panic, run for the hills. While they're all going, sell, I'm going, buy. It's like, exactly. I bought when, I ran in and bought when the stock market dropped to 3,200.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, the stock market now, the FTSE is sitting at 7,000. It's like happy days, doubled in investment. Plus, I've got the return on it as well, the 4% every year. That's what the type of thing you've got to think about. You've got to think about the long-term attitude. You've not got to sweat the small stuff. And that's the day-to-day trivia that happens in between your life. You've got to learn to ignore that and actually stop getting embedded into it and sticking it out. This is why we talk about this so much, about making sure you're there and you stick it out all the way through. So definitely, no matter what happens overnight, no matter what happens in the UK economy, in the last 120 years, they've seen every single recession has lasted 1.25 years on average. And after that, every single wealth building period after that is about a 9-year average after that. So for the next 9 years after a recession, people start to build huge amounts of wealth over the next 9 years because of the recession. I argue the case that when the recession happens, that's the time to step it up because everybody else is treating everything so scarce. They're all going, oh, I'm going to hold on to this, I'm going to hold on to that. I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to market. I can't afford to advertise. I can't afford to do that. You can't afford not to.
Should look at it as a time of opportunity.
It's the golden opportunity when no one else is doing it. You're head and shoulders of everybody else. You've got prime position. No one else is advertising. You're right in everybody's kitchens and right in everybody's social media presence every single time because no one else is doing that. You've got prime position. You're the disruptor. So when you come out of recession, you're hitting the ground running. You're hitting the ground running straight away, and then you're on that trajectory. You're riding the wave. This is what we talk about, riding the wave. You're just paddling. It's like a surfboard. You're on your surfboard paddling away there in the background. You're just laying, and you're just waiting for the right wave to come along. And there's a recession. There's a recession. It's all flat. And sometimes it's the waves are just going, and you think, no, I'll just miss that one. I'll just miss that one. And then all of a sudden, because you're paddling, you've got that momentum, you get this wave and you go, yeah, beauty. And that's when it hits. And that's when you go for the next 9 years, you're on that ride. Yep. Definitely. Whereas everybody else hasn't even got in the water yet with their board. That's what happens. And then they go, oh, I missed that wave. And it's like, no wonder, because you won the paddling during the time of the recession.
Yeah.
That's what happened in the pandemic. What happened in the pandemic? It's like we kept going, we kept doing it, we kept producing, we kept throwing it all out there, we kept all the in everybody's mindsets, and then it just went boom straight after that.
Yeah.
Okay, next one for me is broaden your investments. Okay. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, as a general wealth building rule, it's a good idea to hold a spread of assets, shares, bonds, property, cash. So you have a balanced and diverse portfolio. This can help you even out returns over the long term because every dog has their day. As one goes up, one comes down, one goes up, one comes down. So you spread it out a bit, you've diversified your income a bit. Depending on market conditions at the time, you can diversify your portfolio, as I said, by spreading it out across some, geographical areas. If you've got property investment, London, Dundee, all the rest of it, I tend to stay in Fife. Fife's a good area, but Fife's a good microcosm of the whole of the UK. You've got St Andrews at the one end, which is the London of Fife. You've got other places at the other end, and you've got the middle of the road. That's probably the key as well. The next one for me is, sometimes it's a challenge. Keep emotions.
This is something that everybody struggles with, and
we talked about this, didn't we? Just the other night. Letting your emotions direct your investment decisions generally isn't considered a sensible path to boosting your actual returns. Whilst it's normal and understandable to experience some jitters as an investor, because you've never done it before, people are terrified of property investment when they first start out. And then once they realise how so simplified this is and systematic this is in order how to do this, it's like, oh my God, I should have done this ages ago. I'm going to start buying more. I'm going to start buying more. And that's what actually happens, because I did that in the beginning as well. So during periods of volatility, it's important trying not to panic and selling out of the market at a loss. Because that's when people like me go, well, hey, I'm buying. Yeah. I just did that recently. I know an investor's actually just sold at a loss. They've 70 grand home report, and I've got it for 56.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mental. We're going to talk about that, not in this show, but a later show.
Yeah.
At the same time, the investment will rise in value. I've added value already, and we're tempted to cash out and sell for the fear of losses to come. But the key is to think about it and reason why you chose the investments in the first place, and remind yourself that you're feeling nervous. It's okay. It's a protection thing.
It's natural.
It's a natural thing to do. Yeah. For me, the next one, the final one here, is remember to reinvest dividends. Many investors receive an income through dividends, which may be attractive given the low interest rates. However, if you don't need this income, reinvest the dividends can give you potential substantial boost. This is what I talked about your limited company. Take the £2,000 out every single year, tax-free, out your limited company in dividends, and then just put it back in as a director's loan. So when you need it, you can take it out anytime. If you don't do it that year, you've lost that allowance. So you need to do it every single year. Even though you don't want it, do it and then put it back in.
Put it back in, yeah.
Because it's almost like having money sitting on your sideboard ready to take out and with no tax.
Money on your sideboard.
Yeah, it's like
makes me my granny.
But it's like money in your pocket. It's like you've got money in your pocket. You've just got it sitting in your company, and then you get you charge your company interest on that, and therefore that interest is tax free as well under the £1,000 tax free interest allowance. So reinvested dividends, potential boost returns over a period of time, because your returns will also earn returns, which is known as compounding. Returns, earning returns, earning returns, earning returns, earning returns, earning returns, 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 returns. And when you realize that the first year that you put that money in, and the interest you earned on that first year has actually made, if you've been in for 40 years, has actually made another 40 years interest. And the interest that interest made has made 39 years interest. And the interest that interest was made on the 30th year made another 37 years interest. Boom! You'll have to get a carrier bag to carry your brains back home. It'll blow your brains out, I'll tell you straight away.
Yeah.
I might get cancelled of Facebook for this. Blown brains out. It's like, this guy's an idiot. It's like, what's going on? But it's true. If you understand that, and then if you invest the 39th year and invest, and then what that compounds in interest, and what that earns in interest, and that money, and all that compounding as well, there's no surprise when you get to year 40, you're a multi-millionaire. And it's like, oh, I've only put away like 100 quid a month or something like that. How's that possible?
I think one of the main takeaways for the day for me is obviously to look at your own situation and your spending and your debts, and really see where you could change things. And then it's the drip feed. It's the drip feed in the long term, and how that really will benefit you in the long run.
All I did was reinvest the same money every single time, all the time, every single penny. I lived day to day on my income I got out of my job, which I worked as a financial controller in accounting in industry. I actually put a hell of an amount of money of that in as well, because I got myself down to living on £1,200 a month for our living expenses. That was it. And everything went into property, and everything went into investments, and it just compounded and compounded and compounded and compounded. But I realized that it was going to set me free. And I saw that happening because I had planned all that, and I extrapolated all that in spreadsheets and said, if I make this and make that, it's a certainty. It's like, my God, this is a certainty. And for anybody else out there, it's a certainty. It cannot fail. But you have to have belief in yourself for that purpose, that it is a certainty for you. If you don't have belief in that, you'll bottle it at 5 years. You'll not realise. It's the standard life one for me. When we used to calculate their surrender values a year before they were due to cash them in to get the final surrender value of their pension or their policy, people used to write into us and say, how much can I get from if I cash it in now? And we're going, oh my God, you're off your head. I never said that in a letter, by the way. We'd send them a letter out and say, look, it's worth this amount, maybe £40,000. But if you wait another year, it will be worth £80,000. Sorry? What, double in a year? And it's like, but that's true. It's like the 1 pence doubled up every day for the next 31 days. 1 pence doubled up for the next 31 days. On the 30th day, it's £5 million. On the 31st day, it's £10 million. And that's how compounding works.
Did you not tell me it was 11?
Aye.
I think it's 11. Anyway. Just before we finish up, there's a couple of questions in there, Jim, if you want to put them across.
Quickly, Paul says, my plans for a portfolio of rented property 2 to 4 in the year, not sure the best way to fund, have a lots home and equity in home, research lots of companies of net, but look for some direction. Paul, message us direct, your contact details, message direct on this post, and we will get in touch with you and tell you how to do that and how to plug into the system we have. The system we have is free. We don't want anything off of you at all. Maybe we want you, use us to manage your properties, but that is it. No asking you, you're no buying a course, we're no upselling you anything. That's it. That's definitely the best thing. Andrea asks, is there ever a time to get invested in regarded as too old to invest in property? Absolutely not, Andrea, because you could invest with your children.
Yes. And
that way it passes on to them in a limited company in the shares. That's definitely one to do. If you're a mature person and not plan the pension, where do you start and have time? Would you recommend property every single time? It gives you an income as you grow older every single month if you do it right, and therefore it will pay and appreciate. And if you do it right, it will pass on to your children straight away upon your death. in a trust with shares, and they will benefit from it as well. Plus the fact all your kids can take out money tax-free on dividends. You won't need to take the income out like that. You take it out tax-free. That's it. Best advice. That's it. That's us, Richard, for this week.
Good.
A lot of other things I could have said, how to make more money and all the rest of it, but we'll get that next week. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye-bye for now. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks a lot.